We got a ride from a couple of young fellows, wranglers, teenagers, country boys, in a put together jalopy, and were left off somewhere up the line in a thin drizzle of rain. Then an old man who said nothing, and God knows why he picked us up, took us to Preston, Nebraska. Here Eddie stood forlornly in the road, in front of a staring bunch of short, squat Omaha Indians who had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Across the road was the railroad track and the water tank saying Preston. "Damn me," said Eddie with amazement. "I've been in this town before. It was years ago, during the fucking war, at night, late at night, when everybody was sleeping. I went out on the platform to smoke, and we was right in the middle of nowhere and black as hell, and I look up and I see that name, Preston, written on the water tank, bound for Pacific. Everybody snoring, every damn dumb sucker, and we only stayed a few minutes stoking up or something, and off we went. Damn me, this is Preston. I hated this place ever since." And we were stuck in Preston. As in Davenport, Iowa, somehow all the cars were farmer cars, and once in a while a tourist car, which is worse, with old men driving and their wives pointing out the sights and poring over maps and sitting back like they do in their living rooms all over America, looking at everything with suspicious faces. The drizzle increased, and Eddie got cold. He had very little clothes. I fished a wool plaid shirt from my canvas bag, and he put it on. He felt a little better. I had a cold. I bought cough drops in a rickety Indian store of some kind. I went to the little 2x4 post office and wrote my mother a penny postcard. We went back to the gray road. There she was in front of us, Preston, written on the water tank. The Rock Island bawled by. We saw the faces of Pullman passengers go by in a blur. The train howled off across the plains in the direction of our desires. It started to rain harder. But I knew I'd get there. A tall, lanky fellow in a gallon hat stopped his car on the wrong side of the road and came over to us. He looked like a sheriff. We prepared our stories secretly. He took his time coming over. "You boys going to get somewhere or just gone?" We didn't understand his question, and it was a damn good question. "Why?" we said. "Well, I own a little carnival that's pitched a few miles down the road, and I'm looking for some old boys willing to work and make a buck for themselves. I got a roulette concession and a wooden ring concession, you know, the kind you throw around dolls and take your luck. You boys want to work for me, you can get 30% of the take." "Room and board?" "You can get a bed, but no food. You'll have to eat in town for that. We travel some." We thought it over. "It's a good opportunity." He waited patiently for us to make up our minds. We felt silly and didn't know what to say. I, for one, didn't want to get hung up with a carnival. I was in such a bloody hurry to get to the gang in Denver. I said, "I don't know. I'm going as fast as I can, and I don't think I have the time." Eddie said the same thing, and the old man waved his hand casually, sauntered back to his car, and drove off, and that was that. We laughed about it a while and speculated what it would have been like. I, for one, had visions of a dark and dusty night on the plains, and the faces of Nebraska families wandering by, Okies mostly, with their rosy children looking at everything in awe, and I know I would have felt like the devil himself rooking them with all those like cheap carnival tricks that they make you do, and the Ferris wheel revolving in the flatlands darkness, and God Almighty, the sad music of the merry-go-round, of me wanting to get onto my goal and sleeping in some gilt wagon on a bed of burlap. Eddie turned out to be a pretty absent-minded pal on the road. He was a funny old contraption rolled by us, driven by an old man. It was made of some kind of aluminum, square as a box, a trailer no doubt, but a weird, crazy Nebraska homemade trailer, and he was going very slow and stopped. We rushed up. He said he could only take one. Without a word, after a look from me, Eddie jumped in and slowly rattled from my sight, and wearing my wool plaid shirt, the very shirt I'd worn to write the first half of my book, well, lack-a-day, I kissed the shirt goodbye. It only had sentimental value in any case, besides which, though I didn't know it, I was destined to retrieve it some ways up the road. I waited in our personal god-awful Preston for a long, long time, several hours, and I kept thinking it was getting night, but actually it was only afternoon. But dark Denver. Denver. How would I get to Denver? I was just about giving up and planning to sit over a coffee in a stew when a fairly new car stopped, driven by a young guy. I ran like mad. Where are you going? Denver. Well, I can take you 100 miles up the line. Grand, grand. You saved my life. I used to hitchhike myself. That's why I always picked up a fellow. I would too if I had a car. And so we talked, and he told me about his life, which wasn't very interesting, and I started to sleep some and woke up right outside the town of North Platte, where he let me off. And I wasn't thinking about much, but the greatest ride in my life was about to come up. A truck with a flatboard at the back, with about already 5 boys sprawled up on it, and the drivers, 2 young blonde farmers from Minnesota. They were picking up every single soul they found on that road. The most smiling, cheerful couple of handsome bumpkins you ever could see. Both wearing cotton shirts and overalls and nothing else. Both thick-wristed and earnest with broad how are you smiles from anybody and anything that came across their path. I ran up and said, is there room? And they said, sure, hop on. There's room for everybody. So I did. I was amazed by the simplicity of the whole ride. I wasn't on the flatboard before the truck roared off. I lurched, a rider grabbed me, and I sat down some. Somebody passed a bottle of rock gut, the bottom of it. I took a big swig in the wild, lyrical, drizzling air of Nebraska. Woo-wee, here we go, yelled a kid with a baseball cap, and they gunned up the truck to 70 and passed everybody on the road. We've been riding this son of a bitch since Omaha. These guys never stop. Every now and then, you have to yell for a piss call. Otherwise, you have to piss off the air and hang on, brother, hang on. I looked at this company. They were 2 young farm boys from North Dakota in red baseball caps, which is standard North Dakota farmer boy hat, and they were headed for the harvest. Their old men had given them leave to hit the road for the summer. Then there were 2 young city boys from Columbus, Ohio, high school football players, chewing gum, winking, singing in the breeze, and they said they were hitchhiking around the U.S. for the summer. We're going to L.A., they yelled. What are you going to do there? Hell, we don't know. Who cares? Then there was this tall, slim fellow whose name was Slim. And he came from Montana. And he said, he came from Montana, he said, and he had a sneaky look. Where are you from, I asked. I was lying next to him on the platform. You couldn't sit without bouncing off. It had no rails. And he turned slowly to me, opened his mouth, and he says, Montana. And finally, there was Mississippi Gene and his charge. Mississippi Gene was a little dark guy who rode freight trains around the country. 30-year-old hobo, but with a youthful look, so you couldn't tell exactly what age he was. And he sat on the boards cross-legged, looking out over the fields without saying anything for hundreds of miles. And finally, at one point, he turned to me and he said, where you headed? I said, Denver. I got a sister there, but I ain't seen her for a couple of years. His language was melodious and slow. He was patient. His charge was a 16-year-old tall blonde kid, also a hobo in rags, and that is to say they wore old clothes that had been turned black by the soot of railroads and the dirt of boxcars and sleeping on the ground. The blonde kid was also quiet. He seemed to be running away from something, and it figured to be the law, the way he looked straight ahead, wet his lips in a worried thought. They sat side by side, silent buddies, and said nothing to anyone else. The farm boys and the high school boys bored them. Montana Slim, however, spoke to them occasionally with a sardonic and insinuating smile. They paid no attention to him. Slim was all insinuation. I was afraid of his long, goofy grin that he opened up straight in your face and held there half moronically. You got any money? He said to me. Hell no, maybe enough for a pint of whiskey till I get to Denver. What about you? I know where I can get some. Where? Anywhere. You can always follow a man down an alley, can't you? Yeah, I guess you can. I ain't beyond doing it when I really need some dough. Headed up to Montana to see my father. I'll have to get off this rig at Cheyenne and move up some other way. These crazy boys are going down to Los Angeles. Straight? All the way if you want to go to L.A. You got to ride. I mulled this over. The thought of zooming all night across Nebraska, Wyoming, and the Utah desert in the morning, and then in the Nevada desert, most likely in the afternoon, and actually arriving in Los Angeles, California with a foreseeable space of time almost made me change my plans.